Hey fam,
It's Gantt.
and Jade, and welcome to this week's episode of the Good Black Podcast. We're going to start with catching up. Gantt, you want to go first? What's been going on?
Life's been going on. So this week I've been kind of thinking more about just for me and just reflecting on what it means to be creative. And then thinking about myself and my own desires, like what I want my future to look like and how I'm gonna get there, but specifically in regards to being creative and doing things. Last time we talked a little bit about some of the stuff that I feel like would be cool to do and cool to try. So yeah, I think I'm just getting into a place where I want to try more things and I just want to do stuff without necessarily having like a big, huge plan for it. Now, not me quitting my job and, doing nothing reckless, but what stuff I can do, what things I can explore, just thinking a lot more about that, trying to I wouldn't even say be more intentional about it, but just be more action focused in doing more of the stuff that I want to do. And giving myself the space and the freedom to explore multiple things without feeling bad about it or feeling like, oh, well, am I a real screenwriter if I screenwrite and I also want to, help people create their YouTube visions? Or I don't know. I'm saying random things, but if I wanted to do multiple things that are not necessarily connected, just kind of being like, yeah, okay, that's what I wanted to do today, and letting myself do that, because I do definitely feel like a lot of people who come from means of privilege, and and more opportunities, they kind of get the opportunity to do that as kids. Like they just try stuff and see what works. Like they just kind of throw things to the wall and see what sticks. And I don't think I got the chance to do that as a kid or as a young adult. Yeah, I'm looking at the opportunity to do that a little bit more and be a little bit more free in life, and just having a good time. Like I could drop dead tomorrow. Like I want today to have been filled with things that I really wanted to do. So, yeah, that's what's been going on with me. Obviously work is happening. That's always happening. Trying to plan, wedding is always happening. So all that stuff is going on. And but those are my personal thoughts that are swirling around this week. So what's been going on for you?
A bunch of really, well, not small things, just a bunch of different things. So I'm out here lifing. I'm doing, well, no, what am I trying to say? I'm not doing more walking, but I had a really good walk yesterday with one of my neos, with one of my sorors. And that was like 2 hours worth of really great conversation, 2 hours and 6 miles worth of really great conversation. Just talking about life and really catching up. And I don't know, that was wonderful. If I sound different or if I have a lisp, it's because I now have my Invisalign aligners on. So that's a thing for me now. I am, in this teeth straightening game. So that's a thing that's going on in my life, and just trying to adjust to that. I'll have these for about 9 months.
Okay, that's not
bad. Yeah. So we'll see how this all turns out. Hopefully it's a straighter, brighter smile. And then oh yeah, so I this past week especially, it's been like a little emotional for me, just because earlier on I had my last individual session with my counselor. So I am a big proponent of, there's counseling, there's therapy out there if you need it, if you want it. It's always good to have, a space to just kind of bring out your thoughts and like have someone reflect back to you or help you action plan. And so I've been seeing this person, I've been seeing my counselor for about 3 years. And so I initially started because it was work related, and I forgot what like the official diagnosis is, but I'm a type of person that does not, I need a little bit more support when there is like a lot of change going on. And so at the time that I started seeing her, I recognized, you know what, there's a little bit more change than that I'm comfortable with, that I'm used to, and I just need a little support in like processing these things. And so I've been seeing this person, you know, on an individual basis for 3 years. And it's not that I'm not going to interact with her again, but what it will look like is going to change. Also, the frequency with which I will probably, you know, interact with her is changing. And so it was just a little scary. Like our last session was good. And some of what we talked about will probably come out in this episode. And I'm just like, oh crap, now I gotta do this on my own. But she was like, girl, I see you, like we got to a point where I was only seeing you once a month and it's for like 45, 50 minutes. The rest of the time it has been you like figuring it out and, you know, not my system, but like working with the tools that you have. And, you know, so she was like, don't, you're shortchanging yourself by trying to put not so much stock, but by trying to beef this up to make it seem like we were talking on a more regular basis. But I was like, yeah, I know it was once a month, but these once a month sessions, like I was able to, I don't know, it just hits different. And so I was a little weepy. And I freaked out a little. I was just like, well, I need to make sure I have all the tools at my fingertips and I got to write stuff down and I can't, you know, so it's just, but now I'm like, okay, girl, you're fine. Just read a book or something and breathe. And it's not like I said, it's not like I'm not going to see her. It's not like I'm not going to interact with her, but when somebody's been in your life consistently for 3 months and it is something that you look forward to, just that time to like step outside of yourself a little and have someone help you work through a process or tell you that, you know, what you're feeling is very valid. And kind of when it's safe to do so, when it's okay to do so, it's okay to sit in the feelings and like figure out where things are coming from, or if it's actually derived from you and, you know, isn't just a part of this wacky behind society and everything that it has to offer or tell you that you are or are not. So she was a real one. And I specifically wanted a Black woman, and she was an amazing Black woman. And I'm excited for her next phase in her journey. And then whatever it looks like and how we'll be working together. She said she's going to be moving to like a group format. So I'm excited to see what that looks like. And then lastly, I think I mentioned it on this podcast. I say so many things to so many people at different times. For July, August, and September, I'm taking off from providing in-person birth and postpartum support. Outside of like monthly check-ins with, you know, a set of clients that I have on the books right now. But it's what I was hoping for with this time off is that I would have just some space to, you know, allow my creative juices to flow and just kind of live life without having to worry about being on call. And so far I think it's starting to ramp up. My like creative flow is coming. So I've created some stuff for like social media posts and thoughts. I've been able to like think about some very strategic business expansions. So it's been good. But yeah, that's what's been going on with me.
Lots of stuff. Yes, all the things are happening, and that is really good to hear. Although, I mean, everything is, you know, good to hear that you're processing through, you know, the change well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you have your moment, and then it's like, okay, all right, you know, then it's like, all right, cool. We pull it together and focus on other things. So, but cheers to growth.
Cheers to growth.
Absolutely. So, rolling into the scroll, have you seen anything in particular that stands out to you?
I have, and also I feel like this will actually, now that I look at it, I'm like, well, this is for the next episode.
Ooh.
So, outside of that, Oh, one of the things that stood out to me, I'm sure you've seen it at this point in time, the couple that did that engagement shoot in the field and the responses to that. And so I want to focus on the response that I saw recently, which was a guy pretending to be in place of like if they had been the photographer for that photo shoot.
Oh, I didn't watch it, but I saw it come across my.
So Kev on Stage has it on his page. It is funny because it is accurate. I'm like, it captures the awkward energy, the unsure energy, but also I kind of gotta pay bills, so I gotta kind of do this. But are you sure y'all want to do this? And everybody in your life signed off on this. It captures all of that energy. And so the main point of this, and if you haven't, I'm not about to give them any more airtime because they've been getting it left and right. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. But I'm going to use this as an opportunity to say once again, I appreciate how when we are faced with very interesting things in this society, social media can be an outlet for people to engage in another form of processing, and just trying to, well, I guess trying to showcase different perspectives. But yeah, what would it be like to be in the photographer's shoes for something ridiculous like that? What questions would you have? I don't know.
Because I would be like, y'all can get these without the watermark, don't worry about it. Just don't tell anybody.
Do not mention my name when you send these out to people. Or how about, you know what? Do you want to just rent my camera and you can, because I physically cannot hit the shutter button on this. I can't do it in good conscience.
Man.
Another thing it made me think of is I know there's been conversations at different points in time about people having weddings at plantation sites and former plantation sites. And so I forgot who I was having this conversation with, because once again, I just be talking to a whole bunch of people at different points in time. And thinking about where we're descended from and like always wanting to, like a part of me is like, well, I would like to have a wedding there at the mansion, but also I think that counts as a plantation. But what does it mean as a Black person to have your wedding at a plantation? And does it hit differently or the same? Because at that point, when you're Black and doing that, is it more about reclaiming the space? And, attempting to celebrate the joy that is also passed down to us from our ancestors. They didn't just pass their pain down, they also passed their joy and their pleasure. And even in difficult moments, they did have celebration. They did, come together. And so is that like a big, I don't know. And so that was one of the other things that made me, maybe not necessarily with this picture, because it's just BS all around, but that's another conversation that has come up with me like in this moment and reminded me of a conversation that I've had. I should say it like that. Like it reminded me of a conversation I've had, but and once again, I don't know how to feel about that. I don't,
the answer.
I don't know if there's a right answer, but I could absolutely see it as people being like, no, I want to reclaim this space and I want to, I don't know. But then I also see people and can fully understand people saying, nah, I'm not with that. That's just too much.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I completely understand that. And just for context, like for us, because we have I think probably maybe a deeper connection to like actual land.
Mhm.
where we're from. We are, we have our closest connection to America from an island off the coast of Southeast Georgia. And we often go there like every other year for a family reunion. Obviously, the Panini Press has had a impact on that, but we usually go down there, and there is a mansion. There is a mansion on that island that belonged to,
RJ Reynolds.
yes, who was a,
I think he was in tobacco.
there we go.
Yeah.
Because I don't know the details.
Well, why is this a fill in the blank right now?
I don't remember the details.
Oh, okay, yeah, he was
Yes,
in
I don't remember.
tobacco.
Yes, but I know Jake, you remember the things I don't always remember.
So, well, not spoiler alert. So my father currently lives on the island. He has his house, which is right next to our great grandfather's house. And so as part of my walk yesterday, we ended up talking about ancestry and connection to our past, and how we are as adults now trying to soak up that knowledge. Maybe we can spin this in a more positive direction, trying to soak up that knowledge before the older generation, joins the ancestral lands, or before they die. And so I remember, my dad has told me, and our aunts and uncles have told us these stories. But as a kid, I'm like, okay, yeah, we're going over to Sapelo, and this is great. And so much wide open land, and I can just run and play and frolic, and look at all these cousins I get to play with. But now, truly recognizing what is in front of me, I'm able to ask questions, and the information is retained in a way that it was not as a kid. And I mean, the fact that we go over to this island so much, and we have people still live there. I can't speak for you, Gantt, but I feel like I kind of took it for granted.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, oh yeah, I go here. I mean, and I know that other people, I mean, I think it's special. We think it's special, and we know other people think it's special, but like I said, because we've been exposed to this since we were born, it just like, yeah, that's the mansion, and yeah, I'm gonna go to the beach,
Right.
right down the road from it. Like,
Yeah.
this is my land. This is these are my people. Like, so it just, I don't know.
No, I absolutely agree. Definitely felt. I think I felt that a little bit younger though. Of like, wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think there was a point in time where like I was kind of like, this is not. Well, first of all, it's not common. Like, a lot of people are not able to have that particular kind of connection with that space of the ancestors, especially not least of especially not like really truly American Black people, or Black Americans. And when I realized that, that's when I kind of had the shift of like, oh, like we have to preserve this. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we have to actually be actively paying attention to this, and making sure that people don't come in and pillage it, and and take over and white it up,
Yeah.
because because there definitely are like people over there who are not from the family, and who are not connected at all, but have space and have purchased land over there. And hmm, and I
Mm-hmm.
always, that sucks so much about America, because it's like we are always in the position of like always needing money, but only having certain resources that are simultaneously like monetarily valuable, but also have like a historical and familial like connection.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always, I wouldn't say frustrating, because I understand, but it is annoying to see like people kind of be like, oh, well, I'm gonna sell my plot, or I'm gonna sell this this
Yeah.
piece of land. And and it's like, yes, I'm sure you need the financial thing, but it's like, but you don't realize what you are giving away.
Right.
And if I wish I had the money to be able to go and access
Same.
some of those things back.
Same.
So it's, it is unfortunate. It is a source of great, great pride and, and a lot of love and, and knowledge,
Mhm.
in that space. And it's also, simultaneously a source of great pain.
We should do an episode on that.
Yeah. So mark it.
Mark it.
Yeah, I think we definitely should have a time to talk about that. For the sake of time, I think we can cap the scroll there and go into our family feud.
Cool. Welcome to the family feud.
That is an amazing intro. That should actually be, we're going to play that every time we do go into family feud. It's the new segment. Get used to it.
Cool. So you want to kick us off?
I'm still laughing. Okay. Yes. So, family feud this week. We are talking about, well, just speaking on the topic in general. Do I want what I'm supposed to have? And just a little bit of like context on that. I think we were having a conversation at the top of the season talking about, like, obviously we get a lot of cues from culture and society that tell us, like, this is what you're supposed to have. You're supposed to grow up, you go to college, you get a job. Once you get a job, you find a partner, and then you get married. And then once you get married, you have babies, and then you live happily ever after.
And you die.
And then you die. Yeah. And I think we were just discussing, like, okay, these are the things that we are expected to do and expected to have. And like, but what happens when you don't want those things?
Yeah.
So yeah. Like, what happens when you bump into the wall and you're like, I don't know that I really want to get married, or even earlier, I don't really want to go to college. I want to do this other thing. Like, and any step in that pretty much doesn't really align with that general expectation of how you are supposed to do life. Kind of also like creates, maybe not a wedge, but it creates some kind of like, a little bit of tension maybe between yourself, society, between family members, friends. So just to jump in, like, to some questions, like, have you had this moment yourself?
Yes. And I think I oftentimes sit in like, I'm not sure. So it might not even be a flat out, oh no, I don't even want this thing, but it might be like, I'm not sure how I feel about this thing and if I want it. So I think largely for me, it's really trying to figure it out, even down to, so some examples, housing. So I grew up in a very specific way, and it blows my mind that there are people on this planet, no shade to y'all, that have been in one place since you were born. And I'm just like, wow, that's very interesting. What is that like? Tell me everything. So you just know the same people like your entire life, and that's it. But it's because I never had that. Or I had a very like a modified version of it. So as someone who grew up the way I did, like, I keep friends. I don't stay in the same place. And so it has made me want to travel the world and like experience new things and be in different spaces and really enjoy that. And so when I'm confronted with, well, and people keep asking me, well, do you want to stay, in the DC area? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I feel good about it right now, but I don't know. And more specifically, do you want to buy property here? Like, if you were to get married, is this where you want to live? And so my throat starts to get itchy when people ask me questions like that, because I'm like, I don't know. But I mean, I feel like it's because that is that is typically what's expected. Like once you get married or once you are in a long-term commitment, you stay in one place for the most part.
Right.
And I'm just like, I don't know if I want to do that. And I'm still trying to figure it out. Other example is with children. So some people you talk to, they're like, yep, I've wanted to be a mother since I was, since as far back as I can remember. And I don't remember that. Yes, I had baby dolls. Yes, I had babies, but I don't remember ever really wanting to mother someone in that way. Even though what I do is like considered mothering a family, which is fine. Um, but I don't know if I want a tiny human to spring forth from my loins physically. I don't know.
Yeah.
So once again, just being in the state of I don't know. And so when you tell people that as a woman, they're like, oh, that's just because you haven't found the right person, or oh, you're gonna want kids, later, or when you're stable, or XYZ, whatever criteria they have for it. And I'm just like, I have been on the fence for a very long time.
Yeah.
I've been on the fence for a very long time. And I know that this is, as a woman, this is what I'm supposed to want according to society.
Right.
But I don't, and I think it's helpful that I have a friend group that does not care which way, up, down, left, or to the center, what I do. And um I have a smattering of friends within my friend group that are like, yeah, no, I don't want kids. And so it feels like it's been normalized, and I don't feel like I'm like the odd person out by saying I'm not sure, or sometimes saying, no, I'm good. Or maybe I'll adopt, or I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, the process for recognizing those feelings is like when I am faced with the actual question, because it's not like I sit here thinking about this stuff day to day.
Right.
But when I am faced with a situation, or sometimes faced with a question, it could be external, or sometimes it is internal to myself. I, try to think ahead and what the impact would be on my life, and if I have ever felt a connection to a certain thing in a certain way. And sometimes I also have to talk myself down from, well, you should want this. Like, this is how people do things. I'm like, but you've never been like that. You've never, like, you've had your moments where you walked similar paths as other people, and that's been fine. But like, as a whole, you
Right.
have, that's not been your truth. And like, let's not pretend like it has been. So yeah, that's been my experience with it, if that makes any sense. But what about you?
Um, yeah, I think I definitely grew up kind of internalizing that. I always got, in high school, I was a late bloomer, so I wasn't dating and doing, like
Yes.
doing the things that the other high school students were doing. Like I was not really actively pursuing, romantic relationships. But I would always get like, you're gonna be a good husband one day, like, you're gonna be a good dad, this, that, and the third. And it was like, I would get that and be like, oh, okay, yeah. Like internalize that and always kind of feel like that was the life that I would have and that I should have.
Mhm.
And then as I got older, and I started to date, and I was like, oh, okay, like I can definitely see myself being a good husband. But I did get to this place where it was like, when I started to find the things in my life that I enjoyed, I was like, I would not be able to do this with children.
Mhm.
And I was like, mm, 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 and I started, and that was like, probably during that time. And I think mostly applies to travel, which you can travel with children. It wouldn't be as fun.
They would definitely be different.
Just would not be. And so yeah, so that was the first time that I really kind of like started to question, I think, something more concrete about the future of, specifically was related to children. Because once I moved abroad, I was like, oh, oh, certainly I can live a life that is not
Mhm.
that is not based in America. And once I moved to Atlanta, I felt the same way. I moved away from my hometown when I was 23. I lied. When I was 23. I was at that place where I was like, you know, I've been here because of, like essentially because of circumstance, not necessarily because like I desired to stay. And it wasn't that I hated my hometown. I do not. I absolutely love it. I will go back. I go back all the time, and I have a great time, and I enjoy it. It is home to me, and it always will be. And there were just aspects of the experience of living at home and being in that space that just did not give, it wasn't given what I wanted it to give. And so like just changing, just being intentional about about changing and deciding on things. But I definitely think that the ability for me to just be like, oh yeah, no, I don't want kids, and have such a be able to give such a definitive answer on that without I would say without a lot of pushback. It's definitely a privilege of being a man, because I know that that's a very different experience for women. But yeah, I remember I remember when I told my mom, I was like, we're not having no kids.
As a woman, people just get so invested in your uterus. Why are you so concerned about what comes out of it? Sometimes I don't get it. Yeah, that you definitely have privilege in that respect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely acknowledge that. But and which I also developed this relationship with my mom. But when I told my mom, I was like, yeah, I'm not having any kids. And she was like, what? She's like, what? Why do you say that? Because we kind of more so talk about things than she make the declarations. And I was like, I don't want no kids. Like, why would I desire to be anchored, anchored in any space? Now, I would love to. Now, I would love to be married, and I think I'm going to be a phenomenal husband, and we not gonna have no kids. And she was like, okay. She kind of lets me go now, because like I said, I've developed a relationship with my mom where she knows it's kind of like, not don't push me, because I am stubborn. I think it's an Aquarius thing. I am stubborn, and I am very much going to go. Like, if you tell me you can't do this thing, I'm definitely going to take a hard right on you. So so I don't think I got a lot of pushback on that, but I always say it. But I've gotten to the place now where I'm kind of like, if I have children, I would absolutely be in love with my children. I would be the absolute best father that I could that I could be to them. But if it was the case that I was never able to have children, or the stars just didn't align in that way, I would be okay with that as well. Because I feel like people treat children like children, and I'm speaking of children specifically because that's just the first thing that came to my mind. But I feel like people treat children like they're accessories, or they're something that you cannot avoid having. But it's like
you can. You can definitely avoid having them. I built a part of my career on that.
I mean, I'm thinking about people like Kenya Moore and Janet Jackson, who waited till much later in their lives to have children.
Well, that's because they could afford that.
Well, yes, and hopefully by that time, if I decided I want to change my mind, I'll be able to afford it. So that definitely was definitely
that's a factor.
Monetary privilege.
Yeah.
It's certainly a factor. And hey, if you go that long without having kids, you might be able to save enough money to do it. So yeah, that was, I definitely had that moment. I would say biggest moments with that was thinking about having children, and then also the idea of not continuing to live in America. Was kind of like, so I could just do this again. Right, get ready. Oh, pandemic. If I desired to just get up and go and get a job, abroad, I could absolutely do that. And I love the quote that Felicia Rashad had, and I don't know when this interview was, but and she states that the lessons that my mother taught me, she's like, I can live anywhere, I can live in any place and any time, because because of what she has given me. And I absolutely feel the same way about my mom. Like, I'm like, my mom and my family and, the extended family, like the things that I've learned from my family, I could live anywhere. I could do anything. I could be in any place and at any time and be able to live successfully. I think the only thing that provides a challenge about living life successfully in that way, specifically in America, is that there's just so much. There's just also so many societal ills that impact your ability to live at peace.
Yeah.
And that's my biggest thing. It's like I want to have peace more than I desire to stay in one place. And wherever I can have peace and ease of life and, and comfort and, a quality of life that is going to, to give me something that, this particular place cannot, I'm going to go and get that. So just, in changing the expectation and the narrative of like what you're supposed to want and what you're supposed to have in your life, coming from the cultural context of America, obviously. Those are probably my biggest changes.
I just thought of another one for me, and this is related to my business, and we're actually going to get into this in our next episode. But it's, like I said, it's specifically around my business. And so I remember before I even became a doula, I was like, oh God, I never want to be an entrepreneur. I don't want to own my own business. It just looks so tedious. People look so tired, but it also looks rewarding, but I just feel like that's not for me. And so now that I actually own my own business, and when I say own my own business, I have an LLC registered with the state that I live in. Yeah. It's official. It's on paper. I have an actual business. I'm not I have a tax ID. Like, it's a thing. I have to separate my finances. Blah 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 blah. So, in thinking about just specifically thinking about my business, one of the things that I feel like is an expectation is that I will kind of grow it into this really big, like mini empire type thing. I feel like that's an expectation. Like anytime you see someone who says, oh, I'm an entrepreneur, the expectation, or I think what people are anticipating is that, like, okay, well, one day I'll be able to say, I knew you when, because you're going to just be so popping and just be so expanded, right, and like have people working for you and all this other stuff. And when it comes to like personal stuff, I sit more of I'm on the fence. I'm still trying to figure it out. What I can definitively say is that I don't want that for my business. I have no plans to leave my full-time job. I enjoy what I do. I want to see that through. I also enjoy being a doula. I do enjoy having my business, and it is tiring to have to, like, it's at the end of the day, that is all me. Right. And I truly believe in having balance. It's one of the core values of my business. And I put it out there for people, like out of the 7 or 8 that I have, balance is one of them. And I don't see a situation where I am doing my doula business full time and having the balance that I value. Because people be out here hustling. And like I said, this will be a conversation, and we can go into this a little bit further in the next episode. But yeah, I think that's one expectation that in general, like, is me stepping into the entrepreneurial space that people have. It's just like, oh, okay, so you're going to eventually expand and have people working for you. No, that is not my desire at all. I deal with people. I supervise a team all day long. I don't necessarily want to do that when it comes to my doula business. Yes, it is my baby. Yes, I enjoy it. And I feel like I'm not responsible to other people in that way outside of my clients, but it could be as simple as like just announcing I'm taking another 3-month break and just making sure my books are cleared. Yeah. And that's it, versus I'm responsible to my employees. I'm responsible to the IRS for all this extra stuff that they want to ask me for. Like, I just, I'm not looking for that in this moment in time, or probably ever. And so if JTD LLC wants to say just a company of one, that's fine by me. That's all I'm looking for.
Yeah. And I think that's a really, really amazing point that you bring up. I think I would say probably more specifically to Black people, Black entrepreneurs, I think the expectation is to kind of like be like to the moon when,
Mm-hmm.
like you do definitely have the ability to create something for yourself that is not, that's not like that the plan doesn't have to be world domination.
Right.
Right. It doesn't have to be like I'm gonna become the next Walmart. Like your candle business doesn't have to be like I'm gonna put Bath and Body Works to shame. Is that the right?
Yep.
Yes. I always say Bath and Beyond when I mean Bath and Body Works, but I got it right that time. Like it doesn't have to be that. It can
Yeah.
genuinely be a passion project that also, may spur you income. And and that is something that I've been thinking about a lot too, because I'm like, I actually like my work. Like I like my job.
Yeah.
So, with the other creative things that I enjoy doing and that I really love to do I have to put this other thing down because I like student development. I like,
Mm-hmm.
I like working with students and kind of like assisting them on their growth and, in their own journeys. And like developing things and strategy and all of that stuff, like I like those things. I enjoy them, and I'm not 100% fulfilled by them. There are other things that I also
Yep.
desire to do. So yeah, and what that goes into the working aspect too, like the career aspect of like, do you want what you're supposed to have? Like it's like, yes, I went to college and and I got my degrees and I wrote the papers and
Mm-hmm.
I did the things, and now here I am with this degree and with this job, and there are other things that I have an itch to do,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So, I mean, in really still in the same vein as you, like, with your business, like, how did you know when you were ready to kind of like branch out into other things, even though you already had technically what you were supposed to have?
So for me, I cannot remember if I've told this story about like why I became a doula. Have I told this story before?
I think you talked a little bit about your journey, like post Peru, but
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, that story still stands. The point that I decided to become a business owner, I was like, oh, if people decided to sue me, I want to protect my personal assets. And that was that. So
well,
that's why I formed an LLC.
oh, okay, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. It wasn't some I'm trying to, dominate the world or dominate the doula or birth worker industry
Right.
with my business prowess. Nah, I'm trying to put some protections in place.
Yes.
Um, you know, and I mean, being able to call myself a CEO does sound kind of cool. Not even going front like it doesn't. Like I have it written on something, and I had to sit with that word for a minute, and like my community probably, I mean, they roll with the punches, but I'm sure they're like, what's going on with her right now? I remember having a moment where I'm like, yo, I'm actually a CEO of a company. Like that's, even though like that's a thing.
Yeah.
That I'm a CEO. That's a thing, and that's huge for me. So it is cool to be able to say, yes, I'm a CEO. I'm a founder of this thing, and it does open up some avenues for some other things. But the first seed of me starting this LLC was like, I do want to professionalize it a little bit more. And I want to protect my personal assets if something were to happen. Now, with that said, I also have insurance because doula insurance is a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was like one of the biggest driving forces. And then, once I really sat down and thought about it, like I was like, oh, okay, well now I get to like this is an opportunity to, lean into some creative thinking just around like logos and what are my values as a person, as a birth worker, or as a doula. And so bringing some of that stuff to life, and it does give me the avenue to, be able to call the shots for what I, what like call the shots and set some boundaries or not around what my business and what my services are going to look like if, when I want to expand, and how I want to use the knowledge that I have gained from being in other rooms from some amazing people. Like how do I want to operationalize that knowledge in a way that I'm not always able to as a member of another organization or, working for somebody else in this particular space. Like, so I get to call the shots. So like with this business expansion, with me eventually offering like childbirth ed and some other things. And I even had another idea before we hopped on today and wrote that down because I'm like, let me explore this a little bit more because I think this would be really cool and people seem to enjoy it already. I don't have to worry about answering to anybody. So that also plays into my Sagittarius side. I'm not trying to check in with you about what I want to do. So, it allows me to do that and it gives me just a taste of that. But yeah, that was the original impetus for me starting JTD LLC.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Mhm.
So yeah, and super important also to just establish that like all of these pieces, like this is so much like knowledge just to have because it's like, oh yeah, like you do have to kind of separate that. I saw a
Mhm.
TikTok recently where a woman was explaining like the importance of like having an LLC and like your business license and the and the need to separate your personal from your from your business expenses and et cetera, et cetera. So definitely interesting to hear. So let's see, like, so what are okay, so back to the topic, sorry. So how often do you feel like the pressure to like have certain things attained, like, or to desire certain things, and how do you combat that pressure when it kind of comes up?
The pressure to have attained certain things or desire certain things all the time. I
Mhm.
I feel like that is something that I am constantly checking in with myself about. Like, do you want this just because you see somebody else has it? Or because they expect you to have a certain thing because of I was actually talking to some my walking partner yesterday about this and like even down to the simplest things like the fact that I am looking to move and have gone on apartment tours and a part of me is thinking or part of me had to recognize like yeah, I'm in this specific location and a lot of people live in high rises and that seems to be the thing that people do. And then like now that I'm making more money, I feel like it's expected of me to go for this really big, really shiny luxury apartment high rise. I'm
Mhm.
just like, but ultimately that's not me. And also here's why it's not me. I forgot what your question was, but this is what I'm thinking. So but yeah, unbeknownst to me, didn't realize that really small like expectation or what I thought the expectation was based on like how everyone else is living. They didn't realize that was sitting on my shoulder. So I have moments like that where I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that this was a thing for me. Where'd that come from? Is it because I'm seeing other people do certain things? And I'm like, well, maybe that's just the expectation. So sometimes I have those aha moments where I'm like, oh, okay, this is an expectation that you think or that you think other people will have of you because of XYZ things. And
Mm.
sometimes I'm like, sometimes I sit and wonder, like, is that my own internal judgment coming
Mm.
out, but like projecting onto other people? It's weird. It's like this big looping thing, but and so I think it's internal, but also like society kind of dictates that like if you're making a certain amount of money, why aren't you balling out? Like that doesn't make any sense. This is how
Mhm.
you show that you're balling out. And I'm just like,
Mhm.
oh, I don't want to do that. I'm not into labels. I've never been into labels. I'm also not into big flashy things like that. Um, but there are like these, I'll call them micro messages. And then
Mhm.
they create these expectations that I didn't know were there. And like they can be really small, but they can make a significant impact. But what about you?
Um, yeah, I think that happens all the time. And I definitely I think because like at heart I'm an introvert by nature. And so like I do think through a lot of things before I even say anything about it. And that's typically how I combat it when like, when those things come up. I'm like, do you want that? I just ask myself like from a very honest place, it's like, do you want that though?
Hmm.
Is that what you want? And that's it. Like it's like, and if my answer is too if my answer is too slow, that is my own barometer for being like, you don't want.
You don't want that, yeah.
You know, like it's like if you really wanted that, then you would be quick to answer. Or, and this is just for me, not for anybody else.
Mhm.
You know, or if you want that, you know, if you want that and you are slow to answer, you genuinely do want it, but you're also slow to answer. Why are you slow to answer? What's the hesitancy?
Mm.
What's slowing you down from keeping you from saying what it is that you genuinely desire? Then I go down the rabbit hole of being like, well, if I do that, then I can't have this, or if I do this, then I can't have that. And it's like, yes, fine.
Yeah.
So that's the introversion of it all. Taking myself through all of those places. But typically I'm just very honest with and I have learned to be this way, to learn and practice being very honest with myself about what I want versus what I feel like I'm supposed to have. And I think once I made that decision and I was comfortable enough saying it out loud to other people, I feel like that made it more real to me, of being comfortable being like, yeah, I don't want that. And if I change my mind, then I will.
Mhm.
Like it's my life and I have the freedom to, to say that I don't want something that I may very well want, later on. Right now, I don't want a cheeseburger, but in 3 days I might. Like, so, so being able to just kind of like, I think contextualize my life in that way, or contextualize my desires in that way of being like, yeah, if you don't want that right now, that's okay. You may want it later. And if you don't want it later, that is fine as well.
Mhm.
And just
So,
learning to be okay with my own answers for what I desire and what I don't.
yeah. So when you shared your desires, like, did you get pushback, and who from?
Um, funny story. I would say I think the biggest, no, I would say the first kind of, I would say more of a catalytic, I suppose, is the appropriate way to use that as an adjective.
Mm.
Um, the biggest catalyst, I think, that like in my life, as far as like the direction of my life, was deciding to move away from my hometown and going to school, and deciding that I wanted to go to school. I did that entire process pretty much by myself. I told one person that I was like, that I was applying for school and that I wanted to, like, it was my intention to leave, to leave my hometown. That was my sister. And she helped me through the whole process.
Mhm.
Well, she didn't help me, but like she was kind of like just there being a listening ear and like, and supportive through the whole process. And because initially I got rejected because I had messed up in school so royally, like, at my first go around, that I did go back to school after like having like, a suspension, or like a financial aid suspension, I think. I went back to school and I did really well, but I wasn't like, I hadn't done enough to really get my GPA to a place where it's like transferably, like it made
Mm.
sense. So I had a couple of like, rejections, but and I had, one in particular, and I just, it was a change. It really was a change in my life, but I'm not answering the question. So really was a change in my life at the time, but my sister was the only person I told, and she encouraged me to, to go forth and do it. And so I, appealed and got into my school. And I remember telling my mom, I was like, hey, I went to Clayton State University for undergrad in Morrow, Georgia. And I told her, like, hey, I'm going to school, in whatchamacallit, like I leave on August 13th. And she was like, okay. And like, she just kind of like, sure. And I was like, no, I'm serious. This is my package. I have to move in on August 13th, and school starts on the 17th. And she was like, what? Like, so that was the start. I think my mom, like at that point, she really, which I had always been this kind of child to her, but she really was like, oh, this nigga think he finna up and leave. So she was not, super like welcoming of the idea of me, like, just like deciding that I was gonna get up and just go away. Like, you haven't made any plans, you haven't done this, you haven't talked about this, how are you gonna make money, how are you gonna do this,
Yeah.
job, all of these things. And I was like, nope, and I'll figure it out. It'll be fine. And so that was like, I think she is probably the person who gives me the most pushback, but not in a way of like,
you
no,
can't
you
do
can't
it.
do this thing,
Right.
but just in like, have you
Have
figured
you
it out?
figured it out?
And
You just out here ready to jump. She's like, but wait, do you have a life vest? What you doing? You're like, no, I'm good. I'll figure it out. But how?
figure it out.
How?
Yeah, the wings will develop on the way down.
Oh,
Whatever it is,
auntie,
I'm doing.
I feel you. That would throw me into a bit of a tizzy myself. But that's
Yeah,
because I'm like a super planner. And I
yeah.
also like I am an introvert, but verbal processing does me very well. And so
Yeah.
people will probably know my plans well before I know them because I've talked about bits and pieces.
Yeah, and
That would drive me crazy. That would
and
drive me crazy again.
I am the same way, but I just felt this urge, like it's like I have to do this thing, and so I did, and I did the exact same thing when I moved to Korea. I did an application like as soon as I finished, like as soon as I graduated from undergrad, and and then like I did an application and I didn't get into the company or the organization that I wanted to get into. And I was in Atlanta. I remember when I got like the email and I was like, what have I got to do? And I think after that, like I found another like company. So it was like I literally applied like maybe like February 1st.
Yeah.
And February 1st, I did my interview like maybe the following week or like 2 weeks later, like February, like around Valentine's Day, in the neighborhood of Valentine's Day. And then like 2 weeks later, I was substitute teaching. We'll never forget, I was substitute teaching at the same school as where my cousin teaches in my hometown. And well, she taught in my hometown. And like I got the email and they were like, hey, congratulations, you've been accepted to this program, da 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 da. Like, you will need to arrive in Korea by this particular date. I got that email maybe March 12th. I was supposed to be gone on March 27th.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's really, that would stress me out.
Yeah.
And although, well, actually I shouldn't say that. That would not, I would rise to the occasion. Yeah.
And that's what it made me do. And I feel like my experience going to undergrad, it just made me like, okay, cool. Like this is what I'm doing. So by the time like I had gotten to the place where that was the case for me to move to Korea, my mom was like, all right. Because it was like you had to pay for your flight up front and all this stuff. So it was like, where you coming up with $1,200 on the spot? Like, I got, hey, I got a good credit card. We're gonna make it work. So that was insanity. That was crazy at the time, and I was terrified. Also in a relationship with my partner, and like having to be like, hey, so hey,
yeah,
this is happening in 2 weeks. So yeah, but I mean like that pushback, but I also have had a lot of support, and I have my circle is a dot. So so like I don't have a whole lot of people that are, like kind of able to talk me out of much. Like my immediate family is now like, all right, okay. All right, yeah. you okay? You need anything? Need some towels. And and hey, we got you. We're gonna give you a ride to the airport. How you gonna do? Like they are very. I'm fortunate that that I have, very supportive people who also trust me. I think that's a lot of what it is. It's like if you don't want to do this the normal way, then that's fine. But I trust that you are going to figure it out. You are going to develop the wings on the way down because you have proven yourself at this point that you can.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. But yes, sorry, that was a rant. Okay.
It was a lovely rant.
Yeah. So how in your decisions that are that have been kind of like alternative to what you're supposed to be doing and what you're supposed to have, who is your biggest pushback from?
I mean, I think much like well, what I will say about this is I don't know if I actually get pushback. I do worry about potential pushback or how people will view me, or if they'll be like, God, Jade over here doing another black sheepish type thing. Like I can't with her. She's the odd one. And then, and happy. And then eventually I get to a place where I'm like, I don't really care.
Yeah.
Like I do allow myself to think about like, well, what if people do have these reactions so that I can then counter with, I don't care. I don't care. So there's that. And then as far as like actual pushback, I think it's much like in the way of you. People will ask questions, which when I was younger, I used to take that as pushback and you're not supporting me and you don't get it. But now it's just like they just want to make sure they're just checking in to make sure that I have considered the different angles. And if not, that I'm tapping into the resources so that I'm not wasting my time, so that I'm, doing something that I will find enjoyable, so that I'm not wasting a whole bunch of money and resources, just different things. But I've largely, the inner voice that we sometimes have is a liar. And so I'm, unbeknownst to the little voice that sometimes be lying and like, girl, we don't have time for this. But it's been either overwhelmingly positive or like skeptically cautious, but still like, okay, I mean, I'm sure you'll explain it to me a little bit more as you move forward. And then sometimes, I'll get well, yeah, that makes sense. That makes complete sense for you. And I'm just like, oh yeah, it does. Well, you tell me how it makes sense, because I'm just talking at the side of my neck right now.
Not saying it, just
You
happening right now.
You share with me what you're seeing.
Yeah.
But yeah, like now more so than ever, I've had a lot of moments where I've told people this is what I'm thinking about. So an example of this is when I first got into sex ed, I taught sex ed in a very specific way. It was very regimented because it was funded by the government, by grant programs and stuff like that. And so I can't really even, it's sex ed light.
Yeah. Very light.
But when I started to learn about reproductive justice and that framework and sexual justice and applying that to sex ed spaces and what that could really look like, and then realize like I'm going to become a doula, and realize, oh yeah, at the same time I'm doing this, I'm pole dancing. I used to want to keep those worlds separate. And so I've recently, within the last 2-3 years, been more about like, let's do a meaningful integration of these things, because honestly, they're not separate. And so even though I came to each of these things on separate pathways, now is the point where they need to converge and we move forward as one singular unit outside of social media, because I do need to keep those separate. But the message is like, we can crosswalk and I can have these same conversations in all of these different spaces. And so once I came to that realization and started telling people, yeah, I want to talk about sex in my doula practice. I want to talk about sexual health in my doula practice. And especially in the postpartum period, if you are partnered, or even if you're not, just the sensuality and like bringing my pole dance and sensual dance and movement into my doula space. And, where are the other places where I can like, so where's the conversion point, or the point where these things converge with the G? And so when I came upon that realization, I'm like, they don't have to be separate. I started telling other people, they're like, that makes sense for you. Yes, that I see it. I see it for you specifically and just in general. And and so it's like, I don't know why more people aren't doing that. I'm like, that's a great question. Maybe because they feel like they have to keep them separate. So yeah, more recently it's been like, yep, that makes sense. That tracks. And oh my gosh, you're like a little baby genius or whatever they want to say. So yeah, not too much pushback. I feel like for me, it's been internally generated what I thought would be pushback. And then eventually, like I said, I get to a point where I'm like, I honestly don't care. Right. I don't care. And one of the biggest moments of that was when I got divorced. And like, because I was, and I don't even like to say that I was younger. I was firmly in my 20s. I was firmly in my 20s when this happened. But to some folks, you're still young in the pants.
as you get older, you realize how young you were when
Well, yes, but
it's
it's not like I was, went from living at home to right. So, making the decision to get divorced and then like letting that out to the family, I'm just like, oh gosh, I wonder what people are gonna say because we just got married, or we haven't been married too long, and divorce in and of itself comes with, or for me, I'll say it came with a level of shame and embarrassment because of how things went down. And, I had this big wedding, which was an amazing party. And so like all of these things factoring into it, and I'm just like, oh gosh, people don't talk about me. And then eventually I'm like, oh well. Like if they say anything, they need to say Jade did what was best for her.
Right.
They need to say Jade is moving on to a healthier space. They need to say, I hope Jade is okay, and keep it moving. Yeah. Yes, people were curious. But by the time I had to face that, I was ready. Thank goodness. But yeah, that was like the biggest moment of like, I wonder what people are gonna say. I'm gonna get pushback. Hopefully I don't get any phone calls. And then, like I said, internally spinning my wheels, getting to a point where it's like, I don't care. I don't care. I need to do what I need to do. And if they have anything to say about it, hopefully it's these things. But if that it's not those things, then F them. You're gonna get this smoke, like I talked about in the first episode. But no, it turned out to be fine. Like I said, people were curious. So by the time I had to answer those questions up front, I was able to answer them, and I was able to speak my truth.
Yeah.
But yes.
That resonates with me a lot because I definitely, I think that my first thing was like, yes, like, like in making this, making certain decisions. And again, I don't think I made any decisions that people were really going to like, high order question me on. And again, I definitely acknowledge that comes from like a male privilege of like, oh, well, you can take care of yourself, but I definitely got to a place and I'm still arriving at a place where it's like, you had an opinion on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, and the bills got paid on all of those that you did not do. So, like as long as like the bills, my needs are covered by me, I am the only person who I have to really satisfy when it comes to me making a decision about my life. Now that has changed a little bit because I have a partner now, but and we have to share in that together. But I think even in that, for people who are in partnerships and you're partnering with people, you have to partner with somebody who understands the way that you're going to move too.
Yeah.
Like, and they're going to understand, and they're going to also encourage you to be your best self and encourage you through your movements. Like one thing I, used to tell my partner a lot is, once we decided that we were going to be in a relationship and, and it was going to be like, a serious committed relationship, I was like, I think the issue with people who get married is like, they don't realize that your partner is going to change. And when you commit to this person on this day, you have to be committed to every version of the person that they are going to become.
Yeah.
In order to, I guess, to make your commitment in your relationship last. Because they're going to change. They're going to have new ideas about who they are, and as long as those things don't, have a major impact on your relationship itself, but those changes, like if they want to change careers, okay, let's make a plan on how we're going to figure that out, and then we're going to do it. And really being able to be flexible with knowing at the core that this is my person and this is who I'm deciding to to connect myself with and to connect my life to. Like, I have to make sure that I'm ready for the ride, whoever you're going to be along this, this life journey. So so thank you for being so open to have this conversation. We have certainly said words, we have talked and said lots of the things. So I think this is a good place to close out Family Feud. Do you have any closing thoughts on, on this?
Nope. Thanks for joining us for Family Feud. So for love letters this week, mine is pretty quick, and it is actually based on like the final conversation, the final individual conversation that I had with my counselor this week. Um, and so this is a reminder to me, but then a reminder to everyone as well, like recognize the moment that you're in, when you're in it, and cherish that time, cherish where you're at, because you will never have that specific moment again. Um, and recognizing the moment that you're in, because sometimes we can get so caught up or so worried about what's coming, what's to come, or what, like trying to get to the next thing. We talked a lot about expectations versus what we actually wanted. Continuing to check in with yourself, is the next thing what you actually want, or is it just what you think is expected of you? But we worry so much about getting to that next thing that we don't truly appreciate where we're at currently, and the lessons that are in front of us, or the beautiful moments that are in front of us. And so sometimes you can take that for granted. And I'm not going to delve into it too much here, but yeah, just recognizing where you're at and all the things about that place, like the physical, emotional, mental place, recognizing all the things about that place, and just taking stock, taking what you need, leaving the rest. You'll get to the next thing. You will absolutely get to that next thing. It doesn't have to happen right now. You also don't need to look for signals as soon as you think you've arrived to that next place for the next best thing. Just sit in it, sit with what you have. Not saying you got to linger, but definitely take stock and appreciate where you're at. Because in the blink of an eye, things can be gone, things can be different. Like I said, you might not ever have this type of moment again. So are you really doing what you can to appreciate? I know a lot of people say, oh, make sure you're stopping and smell the roses. I mean, some people are allergic to flowers. So some people are allergic to flowers. Also bugs. That's never been, I've recognized more recently that I don't like that saying. Because in the stopping to smell, like you can't, some people do need to stay in certain things for a little bit longer than others, but in the stopping to smell, it's like, well, I'm walking, I'm like actively trying to get to this next thing. And so, stopping to smell the flowers, I might not be able to pull over for as long as I actually need to just be in that moment. And so, yeah, just recognize the moment that you're in. That's it.
Yeah. I love that. I needed to do like a therapy breath. After that, I think my thing is I like to just look up at the sky when I get overwhelmed and I'm like just like feeling all the things and I'm like, what is going on? I just like to look up at the sky. I feel like it reminds me that I am very small. These problems feel big to me right now, and they are, in this moment. But look at the sky, like the things are still happening. Trees still growing, roses, not roses, but flowers still growing. So much else is going on. Give yourself grace, give yourself, patience. And this moment will pass, and for now, feel the feelings and let them go. Yep. So thank you for sharing that. So my love letter this week is that a reminder that vulnerability requires practice, and vulnerability is important. Being able to be, more truthful and transparent, even if it's difficult, um, is so important for you to becoming the best version of yourself. I think, and again, this is, definitely, me talking to me. I have, because I'm such an introvert, I think I do a lot of my processing internally and I do a lot of my feeling internally. I don't necessarily like vent those things out to other people. and I've had to learn, like, to, in order to, to best process my feelings, like, I need to open up and be vulnerable and share, and, like, and say the things out loud, say the feelings out loud, because sometimes, like, I'll say something and I'm like, well, that's not really how I feel, but that's what I've been telling myself, because I haven't been able to say it aloud, and, and get it out to, get it out to someone else and get it out to another person. Specifically, I think what brought this up for me is I was watching my trash TV, as I do. And I was seeing this whole, situation that's going on with Safari and Erica Mena from Love and Hip Hop, which is an awful thing. And like, just seeing, like, his responses to things, I'm like, you have hardened yourself so much that you can't even say how you feel, to this person that you claim to love. And I've seen myself do that. I've seen other people do it, just in arguments, or in any kind of disagreement with people that you actually love and you genuinely care about. It's like, we have to really practice being more open and being more vulnerable with people who genuinely do care for us and people who genuinely do love us. And it's not for their benefit, it's for yours. It's for you to open up, for you to have the relationship that you actually desire to have, just by being honest and, and allowing somebody to see you, to allowing yourself to be seen in a place that's not cute and put together and, and nice and always, attractive, but, coming from a space of vulnerability that allows you actually to be covered. People don't know to cover us and to take care of us, and, and to shield us and to protect us, because we have this guard up, for so much of our lives and so much time, because we don't want anybody to hurt us, but it doesn't allow us to be protected either. So just working on practicing vulnerability for myself, and then also, like, encouraging, other folks to practice honesty, practice vulnerability, again, with people who love you, people who care about you. It's not to say you have to be vulnerable with the person that, at the racetrack, gas station, but, you can be vulnerable with the people who genuinely care and who are really out here trying to make your life better, by being good to you. So that is my love letter for this week.
So let's move into this week's favorite cousin. You want to go first? You want me to go first?
I can go first. Okay. Try to get out. All right. So my favorite cousin for this week is me. I am my favorite cousin this week because I am both a work in progress and a masterpiece simultaneously. I believe in myself, my gifts, my talents, and my ability to bring my own vision for my life into fruition. And that is it. A positive affirmation for myself this week. I am trying to do a better job of that, and I wanted to do it publicly. So
you sound like Snoop Dogg. I want to thank me.
Yeah,
I want to thank me for believing in me.
And truth. That is, I actually deserve it. I don't know if Snoop deserves to say that, but
did you know he has grandchildren? I said, when did this happen?
Really?
Yeah.
Because he was like, there was a point in time when, like,
and they
family.
They look like the ones I saw could be around 7 or 8. I said, so they've been on this earth for a while. Who are these children in his lap? That's cute.
I'm Googling that.
I saw I think somebody posted a picture, I don't know, on Instagrams. But I love that. I love that for you. Yes, absolutely. I have recently started, when I have had my moments where, like I said, that internal voice can be such a liar. And she be getting on my nerves. And so sometimes I gotta tell her, talk to me nice, like, please. So I'm glad to hear that you are also talking to yourself nice. Talk to me nice. Talk to me nice. So my favorite cousin for this week, I guess technically it's a combo. I don't know. It is the Spice Suite and Spice Girl and Marketplace in the DC area. So I went on a little adventure yesterday, because I've been following these two social media pages, these two IG pages for the last couple of months, I think. I've definitely been following the Spice Suite, but the Spice Girls or the Spice Girl and Marketplace are newer, I believe. So accidentally went to the marketplace when I wanted to actually go to the Spice Suite, but they're kind of in the same family. So the Spice Suite, I want to say the founder's name. Before I do this wrong, let me just pull up her name.
Important, yes.
Yes, so the founder of the Spice Suite is Angel. And so she's a cook, she's an activist and an educator, and she started the Spice Suite. And so these are like freshly ground and curated spices, and she puts together blends, and she also has box mixes. Now, I've only seen this on IG because, like I said, I accidentally went to the marketplace. So the marketplace is so at the Spice Suite, what has been happening is she'll have like little pop-up shops of the different, I guess they call themselves the Spice Girls. It's these different vendors, these Black women and femme vendors. And so she'll have them on select occasions or on specific days. And so they then moved that idea to a bigger space. And so I went to that bigger space, which is called the Spice Girlin Marketplace in Northwest DC off of Connecticut Avenue. And in there, they had, like I said, Black women and femme-owned brands and products. And so there were like body butters and oils and even some bake shop stuff, some incense, and some merchandise like clothing. And then, a small rack of spices. So I picked up one or two things. Like I got this creamed honey with almond and vanilla, which is really good. And went to buy English muffins so I could put the creamed honey on the English muffins. And that was like a really great decision. I also got some popcorn from, I think they're called the Popcorn Queens. But yeah, so these different vendors now have this like brick and mortar location where they're able to sell their products, and it's kind of like an incubator. I think they describe it as like an incubator for dreamers. And so I just thought that was a really cool concept, and like Black women and femmes coming together, recognizing, hey, we're about the same type of life, and like let's go into business or let's set up a space for ourselves so that we can continue to support each other in this way. And the oil that I bought yesterday, the body oil, smells so good. So good. But yeah, everything in there was just like so fly. It was fly to step into the space. It was fly to see all the different products, and everybody had their labels. And then for each vendor, they had their own little setup. So you saw some curated pictures of either the founder or like their aesthetic, I guess that's the best way to describe it. But just so many cute little things in there, and like even had accessories and headbands. And so some of the stuff that I bought an Ankara fan, an Ankara notebook. Like I said, the creamed honey, I bought the Napa seasoning, which apparently goes really good on bread. And that's from the Spice Suite, but it was a part of the little marketplace yesterday. I bought popcorn, and it was the buttered pecan popcorn from the Popcorn Queen. So those two locations, I'm gonna have to go back into the city to like find and shop at the Spice Suite. But I'm so excited because I do like to be in the kitchen. I like the way that Black people talk about and use food. I also enjoy the fact that I've started to see things pop up where people are talking about decolonizing your plates and not even reclaiming, but like showing people that, quote unquote ethnic foods can be healthy and that they are healthy. Because, and I had this conversation with someone recently where they were talking about kale, or the post was, asking like if you've ever had kale. And I'm muddling my words, but I've had some conversations recently that really got me thinking, yeah, like we've been using food as practice in medicine for centuries. And then all of a sudden people tell us our food is not good for us, or it's trash or whatever. Sometimes we had to make a way out of no way. But then other times, like a collard green is a leafy green.
It is.
So what are we even saying here? Like, just because it doesn't, I hate kale and I will die on that hill. I think it's disgusting. I have tried it in so many ways. I don't get it. It's
You and
not
I
for
will get
me.
that hill together.
So I prefer other leafy greens, but recognizing that, oh yeah, like collard greens, that is a dark leafy green. And so I'm getting way off subject. So I appreciate the conversations that are going on about decolonizing your plate and just food and Black people's foods, or people like food coming from people of color,
Yes.
like what that looks like and how that really nourishes not only our bodies but our spirits. And we can probably get into a whole episode about like bodies in general, but season 2, but specifically the Spice Suite and Spice Girl in Marketplace. I am so like, I was over the moon to see a place like that, 2 places like that existed. I'm excited to be able to eventually go to the Spice Suite. I was gonna go yesterday, but I was like, let me not have all this fun in one day. How about I just assume a dip on my chip for one day? I'm gonna go to the Spice Suite another day. But I just think it's so cool. And then like Angel was actually in the shop yesterday. Didn't realize that, or else I would have said something, but I don't know, she looked like a dope Black woman, and it's just dope Black women all in one space, pouring into something. It's really cool. So that's why they're my favorite cousin. What I will say is with the Spice Suite, and like I said, I did not talk to her, so it's not like she's paying us or any type of thing for me to say this. I really enjoy the vibes. What I will say about the Spice Suite is that it's not limited to the DC area. They do ship products. So you can always go on their website and you can order online from them. Or apparently what they also do is they do these boxes. I think they're monthly boxes. So that's another way. Like if you are interested in like being in the kitchen, or you like to cook, it's another way to get some of those spices. They always look really interesting. The food that she features on the page looks really good. And like I said, she looks like a really dope person. They look like really dope people. So support Black owned businesses. That's it.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you all for tuning in for another episode of the Good Black Podcast. Please make sure that you go follow us on all the places and show up back again in 2 more weeks for a brand new episode.
Europe.
Europe. I'm not going to appropriate the New York culture. I don't know what
I need to get my Timbs out.
No, I will not be saying that to our people who may listen from New York. I will not offend you in such a way. I am a Southerner. Grits and salt.
Grits and things. What I will say about that is I work with a bunch of New Yorkers. Not to say I'm going to appropriate, but we are playing a game. And I said, if I win this, then all y'all got to give me your 1 pair of Timbs that I know you own because you live in New York. When I tell you, I said, I know you got a pair of Timbs because you live in New York. Run them if I get this next point.
Not run me your Timbs. Oh my gosh. Good well, stuff. Bye y'all before Jada finishes.
Bye.